Hi, and welcome to the Member Services portion of the TMRS Annual City Conference. Again, I am Shannon Lucero, and I'm going to walk you through a member's career from the eyes of TMRS and the Member Services Department, from beginning of their career to the very end. Now, the Member Services Department is the largest department at TMRS with over 30 employees. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to introduce you to our leaders and directors that make the member services team run like a well-oiled machine. Now, to begin, we're going to talk about enrollment. This is the very beginning of a member's career, and this is up to you, the city, to decide if an employee is enrolled into TMRS. You're going to decide if they're enrolled into TMRS by using the 1,000-hour rule. If a position normally requires 1,000 hours or more in a calendar year, they are to be enrolled. Now, this rule does not apply to contract, temporary, or seasonal employees. Now, when you enroll an employee via the city portal, three things are going to kick off for that employee. The first is we're going to send them a validation letter to validate all the information that you have submitted via the city portal. The second, we will snail mail a hard copy of the TMRS Member Benefits Guide to the member. And third, the employee will now have the ability to register and log into their account on My TMRS and for the very first time designate a beneficiary. Now, after enrollment, most employees, they go, okay, mid-career, they're going through their career, and they're not even thinking about retirement. Retirement is so far away, but they may not be thinking about retirement, but we are. So Member Services Department helps along all of the different facets of service credits, life changes, terminating employees, whether an employee needs to add time to their account through the restricted prior service credit provision, if your city has that, or if they're going to do a buyback. Our Member Services Department is the department that helps them with that. We also, if an employee is terminating, we also handle all the refunds if an employee chooses to refund that account. Now, life changes. So those of you who are in HR, you're very well aware of all the life changes that can happen with an employee, whether they get married, they have children, even whether they go through a divorce. So divorce is the one thing I want to talk about real quick right here. So Texas is a community property state. So a member's TMRS benefit is a community property asset. But I want to make something really clear when it comes to a divorce. TMRS is Switzerland. We're neutral. We are not going to tell a member how they have to divide their benefit, but we are here to guide a member if they do divide that benefit and what is going to be required to divide that benefit at the end of when they go to retire. So if you have an employee going through a divorce, make sure they remember their TMRS benefit needs to be addressed. Now, the first big milestone in a member's career is when they become vested. So whether your city is a 5-year or a 10-year vesting city, it's up to your city's plan. But when an employee becomes vested, there's a few more things that are going to happen. The first thing, we're going to send them a letter and say, yay, congratulations, you're vested. And most employees go, all right, Shannon, I got this letter, but what does it mean? There are three important factors to know about vesting. The first, when an employee is vested, they have earned a right to a future retirement benefit. 2, the benefits become more valuable if the member happens to die as an employee or even as a retiree. Third, spousal consent. So spousal consent now applies when an employee is vested. Now, I want to dig a little bit deeper into all of these. So a member's earned a retirement benefit. What that means is once an employee is vested, they've earned that right to that retirement benefit, but if they do not do the required number of years of service with TMRS, whether that be 20 or 25 years, they've still locked in that retirement benefit. They'll just have to wait a little bit longer. Now, keep in mind, there's always a few ways to meet retirement eligibility in TMRS, and that is either worth the required number of years of service, 20 or 25, depending on your city's plan, or be vested in age 60. So if I am vested, and I only worked for 7 years from the city, but I've hit my vested status, if I leave city employment and I never go back into TMRS again, I still have that retirement benefit. I just have to wait until age 60 before I can start drawing that retirement benefit from TMRS. That's one aspect of vesting. So benefits become more valuable. What this means is if a member happens to die as a vested employee, their beneficiary can now retire the account as if the member were retiring the account. Okay? So if I pass away as a vested employee, my beneficiary will receive a letter from TMRS saying you can now receive a lifetime benefit or a 15-year benefit. The options are going to be dependent on who the beneficiary is. So when that letter comes that says, yay, congratulations, you're vested, we also ask the member to update their beneficiary. This does not mean that they have to change who the beneficiary is. It simply means they need to update the beneficiary after their date of vesting to ensure that if something were to happen, that the benefit is paid to the designated person. Now, spousal consent is now applicable when a member is designated a beneficiary. So spousal consent in Texas, when you're married, if you are married and you are designating your beneficiary, if you are not designating your spouse as the only beneficiary, then spousal consent applies. So if I'm married and I'm vested and I'm going to update my beneficiary, if I'm not designating my spouse as the only beneficiary, let's say I put my spouse and my child down, well, now my spouse has to consent to that. He has to sign the form in front of a notary consenting to that beneficiary designation. So when you become vested and you receive that letter, we say, yay, update your beneficiary. They can go in and update the beneficiary on my TMRS or through the paper form. If spousal consent is required, the paper form will have to be submitted because of the spousal consent requirement and the notarization requirement. Okay. So, member services, as we're going along and we're approaching retirement, what member services does, we have a lot of services that we offer, whether it's retirement seminars, whether it's going to your city and doing employee overviews, the My TMRS, you can run retirement estimates. But when a member gets within that, let's say they're 10, 12 years into their career there at the city and they start going, TMRS has been sending me these annual statements every year. And I may not have thought I would actually stay with the city long enough to actually earn a retirement benefit, but now I'm kind of getting there. And so at this point, we like to have employees come to seminars and learn all about their options in TMRS. So the retirement seminars that we host throughout the entire state, we will really dive into all of the options, the partial lump sum distributions, the tax benefits. We will all talk about that. And we go really deep into the weeds in talking about all of those options. Now, when a member actually becomes eligible for retirement, we will send them a notification and say, hey, you're eligible for retirement. Doesn't mean they have to retire. It just means that they are now eligible to retire. Now, I've been traveling the state for about 13 years, and I have been into a few of your all's offices, and I have seen that retirement eligibility letter framed on offices. And y'all, it makes me so proud to see that. And people walk a little bit differently. There's just something different about a person who's already eligible to retire. Okay. Now, that's the second big milestone in TMRS. The first one was vesting. The second one is retirement eligibility. So when a member decides to go ahead and apply for retirement, there's an actual process that we need. And it's a very simple process. It's not too intimidating. The retirement packet, of course, is available on our website, through our public website at tmrs.com. The member's going to submit that application for service retirement. That is the form that locks in their retirement date. That is the form that you, the city, will actually sign to certify that, let's say John is retiring, that John is going to retire and his retirement date. It's always the last day of the month. And you are going to, at the city, you're going to certify saying that John is retiring, let's say effective in September. Okay. So this is the form that locks it in, and he sends it to us. We will accept this form within 90 days of retirement, but about 45 days is optimal. About 30 to 45 days before effective date of retirement is optimal. Now, I always get questions in the field that says, well, I'm going to stop working. Let's say John says, I'm done September 15th. That's my birthday. I'm just going to stop working on September 15th. So my first check's going to be October 15th, right? Nope, John, it's not. TMRS paydays, retirement benefit payments, go into the member's bank account on the last working day of every month. So if John decides to retire in September, his first check will actually be October 29th, because I looked at the calendar and I know that October 31st is a Sunday this year. So if he's retiring September of this year, his retirement date would be September 30th, and then his first check would actually be October 29th, which is the Friday, which is the last working day of the month. Now, there's a few other forms that need to be submitted. You can see there on the screen, on your PowerPoint screen, it is the selection. So a member, that application locks in their retirement date, tells us what day they're retiring. The selection tells us what option they're going to choose. The partial lump sum distribution form, if a member chooses a partial lump sum distribution form, we'll need that form. And then the form that tells us how they want that benefit paid out to them. We need the direct deposit form, which tells us where to send the member's monthly retirement benefit to. And we need the member to tell us how to withhold federal income tax from their monthly annuity. Now, once we receive all of the documents, we send the member a letter that says, yay, everything's in order, you are set, and you are ready to retire. Now let's kind of go through some of the benefit options. There are 7 different benefit options. And first and foremost, I want to stress that regardless of which option the member chooses, the benefit is for their life. The only thing that separates each option from the other is what happens to their check upon their passing. Okay. So the retiree life only option, it looks really good. Most members look at it and they go, oh, I want this one, because it is the highest pay-in option. But how this option works is it pays for the retiree's life only. Upon the retiree's passing, the check stops. All benefits cease. Now, the only caveat to this is by law, TMRS has to pay out the benefit, the deposits, the personal deposits and interest in a member's account to the retiree or to their beneficiary. So in the event a retiree passes away shortly after retirement, TMRS will actually go and look at their account and determine if all of their funds were paid out, their personal deposits and interest. And if there's still a balance, their beneficiary will receive the balance in a one-time payment. There are no continuing monthly payments. Okay? So the next 3 options are called the survivor options, retiree life survivor options. There's 3 different percentages. There's 100%, 75%, and 50%. Now these percentages is the percentage of the retiree's check the survivor will receive for the rest of their life. So this option works like this. If I'm the retiree and I have my husband down as my 50% survivor, and I choose this option, I will get a check for the rest of my life. And upon my passing, my survivor, my husband, would receive 50% of the check I was receiving for the rest of his life. So if I was getting $1,000 upon my death, he would receive $500 a month for the rest of his life. Okay? You can only choose one survivor on this option, and that survivor cannot be changed throughout retirement. Now, the next 3 options, which are usually the most confusing options, are called the guaranteed term options. I have been all over the state, and I've had so many people from North Texas to South Texas, East and West, come up and say, why would anyone choose to only get paid for 5, 10, or 15 years? At this point, I know that the member doesn't really understand how the guaranteed term options work. Because the guaranteed term options, like I said earlier, All of these options pay the retiree for life. However, the guaranteed term options guarantee that a payment is guaranteed to be paid out for the first 5, 10, or 15 years of a retiree's life, regardless of who it's going to. So, for example, if I retire and I choose the 15-year guaranteed term option, if I pass away in, let's say, year 7 of retirement, well, there's still 8 years left on this guarantee. The TMRS will make that payment for the next 8 years to my beneficiary, and then the payment stops. Now, if I choose this option and I happen to not pass away until year 18 of retirement, well, I'm the retiree. I kept getting my check for life. But since the 15 years has expired, there would be no further payments upon my death. Okay, so a lot of people ask, all of these options, once you choose this options and you receive that first annuity check, you cannot change the option that you've chosen. Okay, on the 15, 10, and 5-year guaranteed term options, you can update your beneficiaries. I happen to have 3 kids. I could put all 3 of my kids down on the 15-year guarantee, and if they make me mad, I can take them off, and I can put my 3 siblings down. The guaranteed term options are guaranteeing my life and a time frame, so we're not looking at their ages. But the survivor options, we're looking at the retiree's age and the survivor's age, so therefore they cannot update that survivor throughout retirement. Now, there's always going to be some exceptions that apply for divorce or the death of the beneficiary, the survivor. So in those cases, you can call our office and we can walk you through all of those issues. But in talking about whether or not the survivor passes away first, when I'm out talking, I always get a question. I always get someone raising their hand and saying, well, what if I put that 100% survivor and I put my husband down and he passes away first? Well, what happens? So it's a perfect segue into, I'm going to go back. It's a perfect segue into this question. If you choose the retiree 100% survivor option and your survivor passes away first, what TMRS will do is actually increase the retiree's check for the rest of their life. So once the retiree has notified us of their survivor's passing and we've received the required documentation, we will increase the retiree's check for the rest of their life. So Tim, we have made, do have provisions for that. So once a retiree is retired, we don't just walk away from them. We're still here for our retirees. So even beyond retirement, a retiree can still log into their MyTMRS account. They can update their addresses. They can update their withholding. If they're under the HELPS program for our public safety officers, they can update that deduction. They can even get their benefit confirmation letter. That is a big thing for our retirees needing confirmation of their annuity, their retirement benefit. So they can download that from MyTMRS. Again, we also send out newsletters to our retirees. We don't just retire them and kick them out the door. They're still part of our TMRS family. Now, once a member has retired and they're a retiree, and they may not think the retirement's all it's cracked up to be, and they decide to go back to work. Now, you've already heard from Colin about our new legislation that goes into effect on September 1st regarding the 1-year break. So if a retiree goes back to work for any other city other than their retiring city, their annuity is not affected. It must be after their date of retirement. They'll come back into this new city already retirement eligible and already vested. Okay, so let me give an example. If I have retired from a city, let's say I retire from the city of Round Rock, and 6 months later I decide to go work for the city of Georgetown. I can go work for the city of Georgetown, and I walk in the door, I'm retirement eligible, and I'm already vested. Because once you've obtained that status in TMRS, you maintain that status. So I can work for about another 3 years in Georgetown and then decide, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and retire. They would actually retire the second membership. Now, a lot of our retirees think that we will combine the two memberships, but we don't. So once you are retired and you're receiving your monthly annuity, that account is a closed account, and that's your account. If you retire again, it is a second membership. So the retiree would actually receive 2 direct deposits, one from the Round Rock account and one from the Georgetown account. We never combine those. Now, when I go back to work for Georgetown, I'm going to continue collecting my annuity from Round Rock, my retirement benefit from Round Rock. And I just start over in a new account with the city of Georgetown. Now, with our new legislation that goes into effect on September 1st, if I retire from the city of Round Rock and I go back to the city of Round Rock after 6 months, they call me back and say, Shannon, we really need you. Can you come back? If I go back, let's say in 6 months, when I start back over, I am again retirement eligible, and I'm going to start a brand new account at TMRS, a brand new membership. But because I didn't have a 1-year break in service, my annuity will be suspended. Okay? In order to avoid that suspension, a retiree has to be gone from their retiring city for 1 full year. So at the city, if you are wanting to bring back a past retiree, there has to be a full 1 year break in order for that retiree to not have their annuity suspended after September 1st. Remember, that legislation does not go into effect until September 1st. Now, the last part of a member's career. So we've talked about the very beginning, from enrollment to getting vested to retiring, returning back to work. And now the last part of a member's career is that Member Services handles is those survivor services in TMRS. So it's not a fun topic to talk about. I don't like talking about it, but because TMRS is a lifetime annuity, it's a necessary topic to talk about, is that we will have member deaths, we will have retiree deaths, we'll have beneficiary deaths, and Member Services is the department that actually processes all of our member deaths and makes sure that no matter what payments are due, are paid out. Okay. So we are here at your service, and I said I wanted to introduce you to our team at the office. So you've already seen Debbie Munoz and Chad. Debbie Munoz, if you have been around TMRS, you know her, you love her. She's energetic, she is so knowledgeable, and she has a smile a mile wide. She has over 23 years of service with TMRS, and she is the Director of Member Services. Now, under her, she has Chad and Vicki as her managers. Chad is the member call center manager, and he has 19 years of service with TMRS. In fact, Chad has 1 month of service over me. He was hired the month before I was. And then Vicki Vasquez also has over 20 years of service in TMRS. So Chad, like I said, he manages the Member Service Center, which is the call center, and he has a supervisor, April Hernandez and Nick Fontecchio. They are there to make sure that the calls are answered Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and they lead that team. Now, Chad leads the regional managers, which includes myself, Shannon Lucero, and Lorraine Moreno. We are the ones who are going to go out to your city to do employee overviews, benefit fairs, retirement seminars. We are there to make sure your employees understand the TMRS benefit. We also, besides on in-person visits, we'll do virtual visits, email, we'll talk on the phone with any member who just has some really in-depth questions. We are there to help them. Now, Vicki Vasquez, she manages those 3 different teams. And the first one is that benefits administration team that Mariam Alave-Jani, she's the supervisor of this team. So she's the one processing all the stuff that happens while a member is in the system, when they're actively an employee, whether that's updating their beneficiaries, adding service credit, those divorces I talked about, which go hand in hand with those quadros, qualified domestic relations order. So Marianne actually celebrated 20 years of service this past year. So Vicki's next team is the benefits administration team, retirement and refund services. Chris Rodriguez-Horn, who also happens to have over 20 years of service with TMRS, she's on this team that deals with all the accounts that are outgoing. When a member retires, applies for retirement, and now all of a sudden, instead of putting money into the system, the money is going to start going out to them by way of their retirement benefit. Also the refunds, all of those payment issues. So Chris makes sure that her team is working there on that one. And then the last team on the benefits administration team is the beneficiary services. And this is run by Shelly Ransom. She's the supervisor. Now, Shelly has over 26 or 27 years of service with TMRS. And so she knows exactly what she's talking about. And she makes sure that when a member, retiree, or beneficiary has passed, that those benefits get paid out as painlessly and as quickly to the appropriate person. So as you can see, there is a wealth of knowledge and experience leading the Member Services Department. We are here for you. We are here for our cities. We are here for our members, and we are committed to superior service.
And we're back live for question and answer on Member Services Committed to Superior Service. I'm pleased to have with me Shannon Lucero, Regional Manager from our Member Services Department. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's jump right into our questions. First question for you out of the gate, Shannon. Can you clarify the 1,000-hour rule? We hear about it a lot.
We do hear about it a lot. So the 1,000-hour rule, the TMRS Act states that any employee in a position that normally requires service from the person for not less than 1,000 hours a year must be enrolled in TMRS. So generally, a year is the city's fiscal year or a calendar year.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Good. Thank you. Next question for you. When enrolling a new member through the city portal, is there a place for beneficiary designation?
There actually is not. So the city portal is the city's dedicated login to the TMRS site. So the city portal does not include a place for employees to designate a beneficiary because the member is responsible for designating their beneficiary. Now, TMRS will also in the future be changing the new member enrollment form to eliminate that beneficiary designation section. So once a city enrolls a member into TMRS, it is the member's responsibility to designate or update their beneficiary. When the city enrolls an employee in TMRS, we're going to go ahead and send them a letter and encourage them to go ahead and go on to My TMRS and designate their beneficiary for the very first time in their TMRS career.
Fantastic. And that's self-service for the city to get the employee enrolled. It's self-service for the member to designate that beneficiary.
Yes, on their own dedicated login.
Next question for you. If the city discovers an error in an employee's TMRS contributions, how do we fix it?
Now, okay, this is a great question because no one is perfect and their errors could be made. So TMRS, we do have an internal process to help correct these errors. So as soon as the city discovers an error has been made, we encourage them, we ask them to call our 1-800 number, 1-800-924-8677, and our Member Services Center will immediately report it so that we can do what we need to do to rectify this error.
Good. And, you know, that's important. You said one thing that I think all cities need to take away is as soon as you discover the error, let us know.
Right.
Because we have to figure out what is the type of error, what is it going to take to get it corrected. And there are some time constraints and time limitations on some errors that you can actually correct.
Correct. Most definitely. Time is of the essence.
Next question. What happens if a city employee is paid through workers' compensation? We get this question from cities a lot.
We do, and this is a really loaded question, and it has a few working parts to it. So if the employee is receiving workers' compensation, the city must deposit the employee's TMRS contribution. So that contribution is calculated on the employee's gross workers' compensation. Now, the employee will continue to receive that service credit in TMRS while they're out on workers' compensation. But remember, if the employee is receiving workers' compensation directly from an insurance company, the employee should provide the city with their TMRS contribution each month. If the employee is receiving part of the workers' compensation from the city and part from an insurer, the city should deposit the employee's TMRS contribution from the gross amount, adding both of those two gross compensations together from both the city and the insurer. So it can be very loaded, and we're here to answer any of those questions if a city has that question.
I agree with you. We are still talking about gross compensation, but then you get into the issue of who's paying it and how much are they paying to determine how those contributions come into TMRS. But importantly, we don't want it to be lost on cities that if an employee goes out on workers' compensation, they still have the opportunity to continue to have their service credited in TMRS.
Correct.
We can assist them with that. Next question. Can a member change their retirement benefit option after retirement?
Oh, after retirement. Actually, no. After a member has received their first benefit payment, the option cannot be changed. Now, there's always exceptions to rules, and there's one exception for marriage after retirement, but it really is driven by the option that was chosen by the member at retirement. So those dominoes have to always fall in line for that to actually happen. So best advice, if a member is getting married or divorced or any of those issues at retirement, is to call our office and ask those questions so we can find out if they fall in that exception.
Okay. But we always want to make sure that employees, our members who are getting ready for retirement, we want them to be as educated as possible. And you attending this event today helps you in helping our members understand these payment options on their way out. And importantly, once you've retired and you've received that first payment, you're locked into that payment option in general.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Terms.
That's my most often asked answer. Can you change it? And I will always say no right up from the beginning. No, you cannot change your option.
Yeah. Next question. Does a member have to be vested to be eligible for supplemental death benefits?
Oh, great. The supplemental death benefits, in my presentation earlier, I talked about that this is that optional provision that a city can adopt to provide a benefit to their members in the event of their passing as an active employee or as a retiree. This is as an active employee, so the answer is no. A member does not have to be vested to be eligible for that supplemental death benefit payment.
Good. Hey, can you do me this favor? The supplemental death benefit from time to time, you mentioned both in your presentation and just now, you said that it is the lump sum death benefit. It's an optional coverage that cities can have. 1 times the annual salary for an active employee who would pass away, $7,500 for a retiree who would pass away. I have had the occasion, and actually had it just this year, where I've had a city call and say, we've got an employee who's faced with a terminal condition. What option does this employee have? They're not quite ready to retire. They are looking at what the benefit would be if they were to pass as an active employee versus a retiree. 1 times the annual salary versus the $7,500. Can you talk about the extended supplemental death benefit option?
And Anthony, in all of our years of experience, we've all talked to members face to face, and it's really hard, but it's all about education. And the supplemental death benefit, there's an automatic extended supplemental death benefit to cities who have this provision, that it's automatically extended to the members if they leave employment due to an illness. So that automatic extension is for 6 months. It's automatic. The city does not have to do anything if that employee is still off the books and not making TMRS contributions, but the city still considers them an employee after that 6-month mark. The city would need to actually contact TMRS and send us in writing their wish to continue covering this employee under that supplemental death benefits provision.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next question. Does an employee have to vest, work 5 years or more, with every TMRS city they work for in order to include the city's matching funds when we are calculating their retirement benefit?
Oh, this is great. I get this question all the time. The answer is no. TMRS is a system that combines all an employee's TMRS city services when we calculate that member's retirement benefit. So, for example, we have an employee who works for 3 TMRS cities for a total of 6 years. Now, assuming all 3 of those cities are 5-year vested cities, that member would receive a retirement benefit because they were vested because they have 6 total years. And when we calculate that retirement benefit, they would receive city matching from each one of those cities. So if they had 2 plus 2 plus 2, even though they didn't vest individually with that city, they vested with TMRS. So they would receive the city match.
Good. That total service counted toward the total vesting, and assuming in that example that that employee, that member eventually reaches retirement eligibility,
Correct.
that person's going to get the city match from each of the cities that he's worked for during his career.
They sure will.
Next question. Can a member borrow from their TMRS account?
They cannot. A member cannot borrow money from their TMRS account. The only time a member can receive funds from their TMRS account is when they terminate employment and then request a refund of their account balance. Now, that's only deposits and interest. They forfeit anything else. Now, if a vested member refunds their account, they forfeit their benefit to that future benefit, that retirement benefit.
That
so
lifetime benefit.
That lifetime benefit. So that's they cannot borrow from the account, and it's there for their retirement benefit.
That's right, and we certainly would counsel with a vested member who would call our member services unit and ask about taking a refund. We want them to know what they're actually giving up should they take that refund. That's a lifetime retirement benefit.
They are.
And they're giving up a whole lot more than they're actually receiving in that refund. Great, thank you. Next question. Does a member have to refund their TMRS account if they terminate employment with a TMRS city before they're eligible for retirement?
They don't. A member does not have to refund their TMRS account if they terminate employment with a TMRS city. Now, keep in mind, like I just said, if a vested member refunds their TMRS account, they are forfeiting their lifetime retirement benefit. So it's kind of going back to that previous question. When a vested member does refund, they are forfeiting that lifetime benefit.
Shannon, that actually brings us to the end of the questions for your session. Thank you again for being here, covering the questions on member services committed to superior services.
And we are. Thank you.
Okay. Before we conclude, we have a few words from our retirees, followed by closing remarks from our Executive Director, David Wesco.